Money can buy mansions, private jets, and even entire islands, but what if it can't buy the one thing you need most, your life? That was the haunting question surrounding the powerful billionaire Richard Holden. Richard wasn't just rich. He was one of the richest men in America. His empire stretched from oil to real estate, to a line of luxury tech gadgets everyone wanted to own. At 68 years old, Richard lived in a glass palace of a mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean. His cars were worth more than most people's houses, his private yacht was practically a floating city, and his personal staff operated with the precision of a military unit, and yet, for all his wealth, Richard had become a prisoner in his own body. It started small, a little dizziness one morning, a sudden drop in energy, an ache that wouldn't go away. Then came fainting spells, blackouts, and mysterious pain that no scan or blood test could fully explain. Doctors were flown in from every corner of the globe. Harvard professors. World-class surgeons from Switzerland. Specialists from Japan who charged a fortune just to consult. In total, 20 of the world's most brilliant medical minds gathered in Richard's mansion over the course of several months, and they all failed. They tried pills. They tried therapies. They ran tests worth millions of dollars. Machines beeped, nurses hurried, experts whispered in hallways. Some thought it was cancer, others suggested a rare autoimmune disorder, still others blamed stress, but the truth was simple: no one knew. The billionaire was slipping away, and his billions were powerless to stop it. His family, 2 adult sons and a daughter, stood by, impatient and frustrated. They weren't so much worried about their father's life as they were about their inheritance. The longer Richard stayed alive, the longer they had to wait for his empire, and so the atmosphere inside the mansion grew darker. A billionaire at death's door, 20 doctors who couldn't save him, and family members counting the days, everyone except one person, a woman whose presence was so ordinary in that golden palace, most people overlooked her. Her name was Mariah. She was the housekeeper. Mariah had been with the Holden family for more than 20 years. She had started cleaning the kitchen floors when Richard's children were still in school. Over the years, she had cooked his breakfasts, polished his silverware, and ironed his suits. She never raised her voice, never intruded, and was invisible when the rich and powerful held their meetings, but Mariah watched everything. She listened. She noticed, and what she noticed, none of the doctors did. Mariah wasn't educated in medicine. She didn't have a degree, or a diploma, or even the fancy uniforms that the private nurses wore. But what she had was sharper than all that: instinct and observation. She was the one who picked up Richard's half-eaten breakfast plates. She was the one who washed his sheets when he sweated through them at night. She was the one who heard the billionaire's groans echo down the marble halls when everyone else was asleep, and slowly, she began to connect the dots. One evening, as Mariah wiped down the polished oak dining table, she overheard 2 doctors whispering about a new round of failed tests. "Nothing makes sense," one muttered. "We've tried everything," the other sighed. Mariah's heart tightened. She thought back to something she had noticed just days earlier: every time Richard drank his special health tonic, his symptoms seemed to flare up. She remembered how his skin had broken out in rashes after certain meals. And she remembered the one detail no one else seemed to catch: Richard's trusted private chef had recently changed suppliers for his favorite exotic herbs. To everyone else, it was nothing. To Mariah, it was a clue. The more she observed, the more she suspected something sinister. Late at night, when the kitchen was quiet, she inspected the herbs herself. Strange powders, unlabeled bottles, expensive imported teas, things that smelled off, even to her untrained nose. And then came the night that changed everything: Richard had collapsed again. Doctors swarmed the mansion. Machines beeped louder than ever. His children gathered, some pretending to be distraught, others failing to hide their irritation. Mariah stood in the corner, unnoticed. She saw Richard's lips trembling, his skin pale, his eyes filled with silent desperation, and in that moment, she made a decision that would change the course of his life. She walked into the room where the doctors argued and spoke words no one expected from a housekeeper. "Excuse me, but you're all looking in the wrong place." The doctors froze. His children sneered. One of them even laughed, but Richard, barely able to speak, mustered the strength to whisper, "Let her talk." Mariah's voice didn't shake. She told them what she had seen, the herbs, the tonic, the timing of the attacks. She explained that every single collapse had followed after Richard consumed something from the kitchen. The doctors dismissed her at first. Coincidence, they said. Not scientific. But Richard ordered them to test it, and when they did, the truth came crashing down. The exotic herbs were poisoned, not enough to kill quickly, but enough to weaken him day by day, enough to mimic a mysterious disease, enough to confuse the greatest doctors in the world. Richard Holden had not been dying of illness. He had been poisoned under his own roof, and the person who saved him wasn't a billionaire doctor, or a genius scientist, but his housekeeper, Mariah. The discovery shook the mansion like an earthquake. The police were called. Investigators swarmed the kitchen. Tests confirmed everything Mariah had said. The herbs were laced with a slow-acting toxin, but the biggest question remained: who was behind it? The shocking answer: Richard's own chef, bribed by one of his children, the chef admitted under pressure. He had been slipping poisoned herbs into Richard's meals, paid handsomely by Richard's eldest son, who was tired of waiting for his inheritance. The plan was cruel but clever: let his father waste away slowly, under the illusion of disease, while the world's greatest doctors failed to notice. But he hadn't counted on Mariah. When Richard learned the truth, his frail body shook with rage. He cut his son out of the will entirely. The chef was arrested, and soon after, so was the greedy son who had tried to murder his own father. And then, something remarkable happened. Richard called Mariah into his study. She walked in nervously, her apron still on, her hands rough from years of scrubbing floors, but the billionaire, once cold and distant, now looked at her with tears in his eyes. "You saved my life," he said simply. Mariah shook her head. "I only spoke up because it was the right thing to do." But Richard wasn't done. He told her that no doctor, no child, no business partner had done what she had. She had seen him as a human being, not as a paycheck or a fortune, and so, in front of his lawyers, he made a decision that stunned the world. That he rewrote his will. Mariah, the housekeeper who had once been invisible in his mansion, became the sole heir to a large portion of his estate, not out of pity, but out of gratitude. The media went wild. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire saved by housekeeper, gives her fortune." Documentaries were filmed. Reporters camped outside the mansion, but Mariah didn't care about fame. She cared that Richard recovered. And slowly, with proper treatment, he did. As for the 20 doctors who had failed, they were left with bruised egos. Their machines, their tests, their degrees, all had been blind to the simple truth that in the end, it wasn't science or money that saved the billionaire. It was the quiet observation, the courage, and the humanity of someone everyone else overlooked. Remember this, friends: sometimes the most powerful eyes are not the ones with degrees on the wall, but the ones that care enough to see what others ignore. Richard Holden had 20 doctors, but only one housekeeper who truly saved his life.